Mahima, if I can come to you, one is the governments are negotiating, the technical people are there, but why is the civil society so interested in this? Are there issues for the civil society, for the non-governmental organizations? What is it they want to see happen in this debate on reorganizing the rules of the internet?
I'll give you a very interesting anecdote to answer this question. When there was a UN-led World Summit of Information Society in 2003, that's where the multi-stakeholder system really caught everyone's fancy. And what happened is that there was an official document prepared, and on the sidelines, civil society prepared an unofficial document. Now, there were words which were in the civil society document which had to do with freedom of expression, privacy concerns, universal access, which were highlighted in a way the official documents weren't, because governments predictably are interested in security aspects. They look at it from that kind of, and that sort of is the crux of it. When you're talking about internet governance, civil society is interested in certain principles that the internet should maintain, which, as I mentioned, have to do with access, they have to do with freedom, they have to do with privacy. And in India's case, we have also submitted a document to Net Mundial. And as a developing country, India is very interested in ensuring there's diversity. We want to make sure that there is not one language, English, which is predominant, but there should be content in multiple languages to make it favorable for ourselves. These kind of factors are what actually play with civil society, and that's the reason civil society takes an active role.
Mr. Prasad, now the governments are in, whether we like it or not. And the moment you get the governments in, the governments, in terms of the nature of their political orientation, differs. I mean, China is not like the United States. India is not like, say, Saudi Arabia or some other country. That when all these people sit together, then the question for India is that, look, India is a democracy. It has, it has all the concerns that Mahima talked about. But at the same time, India is also a developing country, and we have a tradition of, working for presumed causes of the developing world in various multilateral forums. How do you think India should find a balance between its multiple interests in organizing the internet?
Well, I think so far it is the governments which have been kept out, actually, and they are now sort of coming into it. And as I said, there is a legitimate role which governments have to perform, and nobody else other than governments can perform that role. Now, as far as India's approach is concerned, as you said, we are an open, liberal democracy. We believe in the internet as a tool of empowerment, actually, as our document says, to give voice to the voiceless. It's one of the functions of the internet. So we are very supportive of that open, liberal approach to the net. But at the same time, the internet is causing other public policy concerns, most of all concerned with security from both state and non-state actors, of criminality on the net, which have to be dealt with by the law enforcement agencies and by the government. So I think that is really what we have to do, to find a balance where that role can be taken care of by the governments, while the open architecture encourages all the innovation. And really, I think the maximum amount of innovation in the last 20 years has been seen on net-based products. I mean, whether it's so, I don't think anybody would like to see that be stifled in any way. And in fact, we would take it to like to take it to new areas and use it as a tool of empowerment, given our socioeconomic conditions.
Okay, I come back to you, Dr. Bajaj. I mean, I think the privacy has been one major issue. Now, people put their photographs, everything, their personal life on Facebook, on Twitter, on a whole lot of things. And your assumption is that, look, it is where you think your people you want to see are the ones who are seeing it. But is there a danger that all the recent revelations about Snowden affair and various governments doing various things, how do you deal with it as you are dealing with it as a private sector person? What are the challenges and what are the laws that we need to better secure privacy of each individual?
You see, on privacy, there have been several laws in the world. Europe has been the leader, so has been the US. While in Europe, it is a fundamental right for citizens to have privacy. In the case of US, it is a consumer right. So it is the consumers which who are wary of giving any information to the government, but then they would like to give it to the private sector without any difficulty at all. But they want the information to be protected. But then the developments of internet in what we call now as Web 2.0 or whatever, moving to 3.0 kind of a thing, the user is no longer a passive user. He's become an active user on the internet, an active data generator. So two-way interaction which has started has taken the world by the storm. That is why you hear that somebody from Facebook saying privacy is dead, somebody from some other, even Eric Schmidt from Google said, if you want privacy, don't come on the net. At the same time, Europe is trying to make a more stringent law, and we in India also learning from that. We are trying to create a privacy law which should be modeled on the best practices in terms of what the privacy principles are and how they should be implemented. So we'll see how it happens. But Snowden is an altogether different case. That is a case of global surveillance by a state.
Now, Mahima, in terms of when we talk about human rights, individual rights, I mean, India as a democracy does talk about it. But there are also concerns about collective security, right? I mean, there are social issues, for example, on child pornography or things like that, where different societies have different standards. So how do you balance the universalism of human rights versus the cultural specificities in each country? How do you find that balance, even from a civil society perspective?
I think it's a really interesting question, and I think that the answer is quite simple. I think that within a common internet, we do have national laws, and I think we can adhere to them. And I think content such as child pornography, which is legal in 1 or 2 European countries, for example, will not be available in India. And I think everyone is quite comfortable to a large extent on dealing with that. I think what we need to remember, of course, is that we as India should probably develop sort of national principles in terms of what we want the internet to be in the coming future. Because if you look at the amount of Indians who are online, it's about 57 million compared to the 922 million people who actually have telecom subscriptions. So you're actually developing an internet today. All of us are developing an internet that most Indians are going to use in the future, and right now they haven't ever experienced it or even heard of it. So I think those are the common principles we should develop.
I mean, Alok, I think, as you said, I mean, the governments have a responsibility for collective security, for social security as a whole. And the governments have, some rules on which they maintain, monitor some parts of the society. But in the case of internet, given the expansiveness of the information that is out there, is there a way of devising rules where you say, look, you do it only when it is legitimate, there are certain accepted principles, it's proportionate to the issue involved. For example, India is deeply concerned about terrorism. So, and due process that when you actually open somebody's internet account, is there a way that are we debating these issues, and where do you think we are going on this in India?
Yeah, I think within the national domain, I mean, of course, the sovereignty of the state will apply. The law enforcement agencies will do what they have to do, and that is a balance that every society will have to strike for itself. That is to how much should be the freedom of expression, the liberties of the individual, and where those have to be balanced by interests of society. So that is one function where within one's own domestic terrain, governments have to act to in a sense create the rules for internet. I think obviously you cannot have them applied across, and therefore you also require a system of cooperation, because to evolve, whether it is in the form of a code of conduct or at some point maybe a treaty, which is probably looking too far ahead at the moment, but some forms of cooperation of interstate behavior, and those again have to be worked out by the governments. And incidentally, I am very glad that India has actually taken the lead and is one of the co-sponsors of the Net Mundial conference, and because our interests and our stake and our ability to contribute is unquestioned, and therefore we should be playing a leadership role as the rules of the next generation of internet and internet users are to be framed.
Thank you. Dr. Bajaj, if I can come to you, last question briefly. There is this tension between sovereignty and about the governance of the internet that, seen from a industry perspective, and you've been in the government as well, how do we reconcile this, that the tension between having an open universal internet and the need for asserting national sovereignty over the internet?
See, in fact, I'll take on from both what Mahima said and Ambassador Prasad also, essentially about the privacy. If you take as an example, you can have national laws, but then the cyberspace is borderless. So you will have an impact of the laws of other countries, and which is where the entire tension arises. That is, are we exporting laws of one country into the entire world? So is the cyberspace undivided only for that purpose? Because if there's a crime, if there's a privacy issue or another kind of a law enforcement problem, so we go back to that country where the servers are located and try to access data. And then the crime in this country, is it a crime there? Even the Budapest Convention also says that the requested party must have, must recognize it as a crime. So which is where the issues of sovereignty and global part and the tensions arise in terms of the governance.
Mahima, I mean, look, do we control all the servers in our own country, or do we seek to extend our laws, depending on if it is data relating to India? Do we say, look, we need access and control over who uses it, someone sitting in the US does something here? Is there a room for that kind of extension of international law and jurisdiction, of Indian jurisdiction, over data located in some other place?
Yes, and I think that what we're talking about right now, that is the argument. This is the heated argument. You're not really going to see cyber Armageddon in the sense that one country is going to totally disable another country's servers, but it's lawfare, what we are referring to. And I know that India has officially sort of put this theory in front that we should actually, if Indian businesses are affected, then Indian laws should come into play. And that's something to think about in the global system, because as Dr. Bajaj said, the world should not have an open internet only for one country's laws to be followed.
Mr. Prasad, I think sovereignty has been one of our main concerns in our general history of our negotiations. But this is a very complex structure, the internet. So how does India balance its importance of asserting its sovereignty, while at the same time ensuring that our economic growth will continue to take place on an open universal internet?
No, I agree that it will take a certain degree of imagination. It can't be solely governments, it can't be solely civil society, and we'll have to find. But there are examples. I mean, if you look at the world of financial flows, for example, I mean, there is heavy regulation within each territory by the central bank generally, but yet there are all these flows going around with millions of actors, which is somewhat analogous to what is happening on the internet. But you've found a system to deal with it without destroying the multi-stakeholderism of financial flows. We have another model of dealing with air traffic, where governments sit with private companies, with airlines, to work out rules in which air traffic will be regulated. So it will require some such imaginative structures to be created. And I think this is really just the first step to bring in governments, to bring in civil society, to bring in corporations, and see how we can advance the common interests.
I think you said that, look, this has been done before. I mean, I think whether it was the telegraph, telephony, air travel, that we've done where complex technical issues came up, the world sat down and found a way. We hope that the business community, the technical community, the civil society and the diplomats will be able to find the path towards a system where the internet remains open for everyone, but at the same time the security of everyone is also taken care of. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. I want to thank our participants this evening for coming here and explaining a very complex subject. So goodbye and good night until the next program of the Wide Angle.
Da 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 da